let's take a look at a spot that I worked on called Football Needs Creators for Adidas. Here is another great example of how an idea can be born from all the things that we've talked about already. Having a really tight brief, audience research, and an insight that is very novel and new and surprising. The brief here was pretty simple. Adidas was really into the idea of creativity in sports at the time. That was their positioning for everything. Creativity, creativity, creativity. And so they wanted us to show creativity in sports through their new signee, a football player named Paul Pogba. I say football, soccer for those of us in America. So Paul Pogba, if you're not familiar with him, is a very dynamic personality. He has often very weird haircuts, colors in his hair, and his style of play is often very exciting and dynamic, and he does crazy things. So as a person, a great example of creativity all around, from how he dresses to how he plays. So what they asked us to do was tell a story of creativity using Paul Pogba. I personally do not know anything about soccer, not one bit. I know you kick a ball and you go back and forward. So when we were tasked with this, I worked with my partner and we did a lot of research about Paul Pogba as a person, and we did a lot of research about soccer in general and all of the things. And so when we did research on Pogba and we looked at him and we saw a guy who, no matter what room you would put him in, he would stand out because of his hair and the way he dresses, we thought about creativity. And we thought about when you're creative, and let's just say you're creative with the style of dress you have, you often run the risk of getting made fun of because you're a little too early. If all of a sudden I'm a creative guy and I dress crazy and I say, hey, I want to wear eye patches. I think eye patches are going to be the new cool thing. Looking like a pirate, that's the next wave. Tomorrow I come in and I'm wearing an eye patch. Likely everyone I meet will be like, why are you wearing an eye patch? Did you hurt your eye? And I would say, no, I just think it's a cool look. People will laugh at me, and kind of rightly so. But let's say 6 months to a year from now, Kanye also arrives at the exact same conclusion. Eye patches are cool. And everyone starts wearing eye patches. We would look back at when I wore the eye patch and I would be like, hey, you all laughed at me when I wore the eye patch. Now all of you also wearing eye patches. What gives? This situation happens in all fields of creativity. How you dress, music, art, everything. This is the burden of being a creative person, is that sometimes you arrive at a solution to a problem that people don't understand. And so when we looked at Paul Pogba and the way he dresses, and we looked at his life, we said, hey, he probably has come up with this, where he has wanted to try a soccer move and maybe it didn't work or it seemed too crazy and people were like, that's not it. When he was younger, he was probably doing things, trying to dye his hair, being a creative kid, and people were like, that's not it. And so we looked at that and we said, that's a very interesting story. The idea that when you're creative, people will laugh at you at the beginning, and then they will understand you, and then they will celebrate you. This is a great insight. We had something to work with, but how could we bring this to life? And when we came to the execution stage of it, we thought about one specific thing. A lot of times, and I'm sure this is true of you and your friends, there's one of your friends who you only know by his last name or her last name. You know their full name, but you call them Smith or Jones or Pogba. And when you love them, Pogba, hey, how's it going? When you hate them, Pogba, what are you doing? Pogba. And so we made our spot and showed his life journey from being laughed at, from being criticized, from being yelled at, to being cheered. But we only told it through people saying his last name. In the beginning, it was all chiding him for being too wild, for being too creative. And by the end, it was people cheering his name. Pogba, Pogba, Pogba. And again, this is a great example. We have something that seems to be, how would you come up with this in isolation? But when we break it down into the steps, we looked at the brief, show creativity in sports. We looked at the insight that we had. When you're creative, sometimes people laugh at you before they cheer you. And then we looked and we really worked from Pogba's story and came up with an execution of, hey, just use his last name, and there we go. So let's check it out.
C'est mon fils, le fils de sa mère.
Pogba! 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 Hey, Pogba! Pogba! Pogba!
Pogba. Pogba.
Paul Pogba.
Pogba.
Pogba!
The name on everybody's lips, Pogba.
Pogba.
Pogba wins possession. Pogba goes past one and another. Pogba. 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 Still Pogba.
Okay, now you have an idea. Let's remember that the most important part of our idea is that it establishes a reason for being for our product. And when we have our take on our product, we want to make sure that it's intriguing and exciting. In the next lesson, we'll get into visual research, which will guarantee that it looks intriguing and exciting.